Hey everybody, welcome to another video. We're going to continue along with our going over the comic books that came out this week, 40 years ago, from Marvel Comics. So we would be on week 19. Again, I record these a week early, so I might slip up sometimes, but it is week 19. And if you look at, let me see, if I look at my calendar here real quick, again, I like just to check this every time just to see how close we are. So this week's kind of interesting. Actually, this is going to be for next week. This would be technically the second week of May, because the May 1st fell on this coming Thursday, but last Thursday as far as the video goes. So it's a little off. And then if we look at May for this week, which would be week 19, which should be the 8th. What did they put it in at? They put it in as the 8th. Oh, hey, we're right on the money right here. Oh, it must have. How did we catch it back up from last time? Maybe because of the way it fell. I don't know. Anyways, so May 8th of 2025 is exactly the same day as it was for week 19 back in 1985. So I don't know if I mentioned that, but we're 40 years ago. So we're going to go back to 1985 and look at the Marvel comics that came out this week 40 years ago. And I'll give you we'll go through a few of the comics. I actually read a lot of these this week, and I'll tell you why. But also, I want to give you my prediction, let you guys predict which comic books do you think that I picked up off. It wasn't a spinner rack, it was a shelf, although there were spinner racks at other bookstores, but the one I used to go to in particular always had a shelf. Sorry, they did have a spinner rack, but something else was on the spinner rack. Anyways, so guess now, and when we do go over the comic books that I just recently read for this, and I didn't have, some of them I read and I didn't actually have back then. So that might, so don't go by that. Just figure out which ones do you think that I actually picked up off the shelf. Going by, if you've been watching my videos for a while and you know my tastes and what I like, you'll see, you can probably make a prediction here. So we'll do that at the end. But for now, let's go over to our website. You know, I start recording a video and everybody wants to get a hold of me now. It never fails. It never fails. Anyways, so I apologize for that if it goes off. So let's switch over to our other screen here. And again, I use this fandom website because it's pretty accurate and it breaks it down nicely with the weeks. As you can see right there, they're all linked. And again, to get here, the easiest way to do it is put in, say, week 19, whatever year, because all of the years are here. You can even put in this year. Put in, or whatever week you think of. Just put in a week, put in a year, put in Marvel Comics, and put in fandom in Google, and you'll probably go right to the exact page that you want. If you go to this fandom.com and navigate, I find it to be a nightmare. So I found it by accident a long time ago, and then in order to go back to the site again, which I did last year, I had to do exactly that. I was like, I can't find it. I'm on the site and I can't find the database I'm looking for. So this is probably the easiest way, is just go to Google, search Marvel Comics week 1985 fandom, and you can put database, and then it'll probably pop up this exact page. So again, let's go. Now we're on to week 19. Yeah, so it must have been thrown off last week, because if you see the May 1st, May 1st is a Thursday last week, not a Wednesday, and these are pretty much all Wednesdays, because that's what New Comics Day were for the longest time. I don't think it's ever changed, to tell you the truth. But May 1st last year was a Wednesday, or sorry, 40 years ago was a Wednesday, and then of course it was Thursday, but now we've skipped ahead, and our Wednesday is May 8th, which is today, right? Wait, didn't I look that up? Remember, we're doing this. I have to keep looking at the calendar because we're doing. Oh no! I take it back. I take it back. I'm wrong. The 7th. It's the 7th. So okay. Sorry, I just looked at it wrong here. It's neither here nor there. We're talking about something that's completely arbitrary. I'm just curious myself to wonder how close it is. But so far this year, it's been one day off, so it's pretty consistent. I don't know what changes that. Leap year, we get zapped by aliens, Tempest Fugit. I don't know what's how that changes. Obviously, something changes to have that happen. If you guys know, put it in the comments. Again, it's neither here nor there. I'm just curious. Well, let's get into the comic books here. And like I said, I'll pull up some of the ones that I read. So we've got, I'll just run through them first, and then I'll switch over, make it easier for you. So we've got Avengers 258, which is continuing that scene with the Terminus in the Savage Lands when the Avengers go after him. We've got Conan the Barbarian 173. I did start. Well, we'll get into this later, but I'll tell you the ones how it fell. But we got Avengers, we got Conan. Doctor Who magazine that did come out in the U.S. I wasn't even. I mean, I knew who Doctor Who was because of the 70s, and I used to watch the Tom Baker stuff with the Fourth Doctor. But by the mid 80s, by 85. I really wasn't paying attention to Doctor Who all that much, so this magazine could have come out. It would have been on the magazine rack more so than with the comic books, but so I'm going to exclude that. Remember, I'm also excluding the epic titles because I've found, as much as I tried to get into the epic titles, and this is actually Dreadstar 19. This is not Dreadstar and Company, which I do have this comic, but I don't know. It's a tough read, I find, and I thought Alien Legion would be better. I found that to be a tough read, and some of these other ones like Sisters of Steel, even the Gru, I found to be a tough read. So I'm going to exclude the epic titles. So we're just basically looking at, and I'm also going to talk about this later when we get into the Marvel Age here, but the Marvel Age comic there. But we're going to look at Marvel Comics, the main Marvel Universe, and some extended universe. So we are going to look at G.I. Joe, which I did read, and we're going to exclude Rom and the Micronauts for now because they're kind of on their deathbed at this point. They basically were a product of the Bronze Age and in the 70s. They didn't really translate over to the modern age very, very well, or in this case, the Bronze Age. They were dying out. So we'll exclude Rom and Micronauts. I'm not going to totally disclude Star Wars because not this month, because I think we've already passed the Star Wars week. Maybe I think it was the first week. I can't remember. But anyways, coming up, we've got a comic from Star Wars towards the end of its line that's by Al Williamson. And I don't know if you're aware, we'll get into more when we get to that comic, but Al Williamson is one of my favorite comic book artists of all time. And he started with, I don't know if he started with, but he got known, he cut his teeth with EC Comics back in the 50s during that whole, with the Seduction, the Innocent, banning all horror comics. And then he was really tied to Flash Gordon. And then he did a lot of he did the Star Wars Return of the Jedi, and also did the Empire movie adaptations. So we'll get to him, Alan Williamson, but just remember that when we come to that issue coming up in Star Wars, we are going to go over that, and I am going to reread that one because I love his artwork. Anyways, so where did we leave off? So we got Dreadstar G.I. Joe number 38. That's a classic cover. That is I've got a redraw. I redrew this on 18 by 24. It's in my portfolio. I'm not going to dig it out at the moment because it's kind of buried, but I did a version of that, and that's been one of my favorite. I mean, Destro pointing a gun at Storm Shadow's head while he's got his katana out, or his ninja toe. Actually, that's a katana, but come on. I mean, how badass. And I read it, so we'll get to that comic. The Hulk, I'll say what I did read it. I was going to stop reading the Hulk, but I did read this, and I'll tell you why coming up. And then we are going to get into the Marvel Age, because I want to show you something specific, not just that proves me right, but we're going to kind of use as a guideline going here on out. And I mentioned it before, but we're going to talk about the one that's in specifically in this. The UK magazines we've got to exclude because they never came out in the US. I'm also going to exclude this Marvel Tales because they're just reprints of old Spider-Man comics. Moon Knight, number 3. Again, this is I think this is volume 3 of Moon Knight, or it's volume 2. It says right there, volume 2 of Moon Knight. I didn't. I gave up on Moon Knight, so he's out. Again, Rom's out. Another UK magazine. And last but not least, we've got Thor number 358. This is one of the only comics I put in my download list that I was going to read that I did not read, and this is considered top Thor. I mean, this is what's his name? Walter Simonson's. This is Walter Simonson Thor. This is what pretty much most Thor fans consider the quintessential artist on this book. And for one thing, I'm not a huge Thor fan. And I'm not a big fan of the Asgard scene, right? But at the same time, I'm also not a fan of Walt Simonson's art either. It's like a lot of those artists back, like especially like John Romita Jr. Sometimes he's on and sometimes he's off, and I find with Walt Simonson, and then also with Bill Sienkiewicz when he was on, because he's on the New Mutants at this time. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's off-putting. I don't know. I just consistently, I'm not a huge fan of it. Now, that's not to say that I don't like it at all. I mean, that's a total misnomer, because I consider those guys, the classics, the masters of that specific time, and they helped create that look of that time. So I understand their contributions, and they did a lot of comics. One thing you can't say, I mean, my people always say with Steranko, it's like, oh, but he revolutionized comics with like 20 comics. It's like he didn't do that much. Arguably with these guys, it's like these guys revolutionized comics. Yeah, but they did a shit ton of comic books. So you can't take it away from these guys, even if I'm not a huge fan of them. And then, of course, last but not least, and I read it, the Uncanny X-Men 196. So we'll get into those. So let's flip over to that file here with those comics in it. So first thing we're gonna come across is Thor here. So let's pull up the Thor comic. Let's go to full screen. Let's take it off the double page spread. Just go single page. Again, this is continue after, I don't know if you remember, the one guy, I can't remember what his name is, he pops up in here. I can't remember anybody's name, but he remember he had the daughter, the red-haired daughter, who was just this young girl. Well, that's the daughter. I don't know if that's the daughter on the cover. Well, let's flip in. You've got the, again, let's go over the credits real quick. We got John Buscema doing pencils. Of course, this is the whole reason, or one of the reasons I read the comic is John Buscema. Now, also put a pin in that as well, because this also applies to the Avengers comic that's out this specific week. Jim Owsley, I think Jim Owsley wrote the previous comic. I don't think it was Roy Thomas. I think Roy Thomas wasn't writing it at this time. But you got John Buscema, you got the Larry Hama on the editing, you got the kind of some of the regular peeps on it. Oh, the cover is not by Buscema. Looked kind of like his eyes on that one girl. It's by Ernie Chan. I've heard of Ernie Chan. I don't know why that name rings a bell. I can't remember what comics he did. I just remember the name. Anyways. So we've got these. So these guys are. It's convoluted, but they're these different people. So you got like the Hyborians, you got the Cimmerians, which is what Conan is, and then you've got these guys, the Picts. which are kind of like the savage guys, and then you've got, I can't remember the other guys. I can't remember like the Mongol looking helmet guys are, but basically you've got like this general guy or lieutenant or whatever, captain. I can't remember. Oh, he's a lieutenant. I think he's a captain of this regiment. They're out and they're capturing picks. They're looking for somebody specifically, and we don't know who that somebody is at the moment. And then you've got, so what's her face shows up. So the red-haired girl shows up. It's kind of funny though. This is the kind of adult stuff that's it's adult, but it's also, and it might make young people cringe. It doesn't make me cringe, but this is just kind of how things were, especially at that time. And this is what, when I think of Conan, and I think of that time period, we're talking 1985, and going, like, my first convention was 1987 that I went to. That was the big convention. Sorry, 1986, I went to a smaller convention. But this is what this is the feeling I would get when I would listen to the adults. I still find them to be older than me now. Well, they would technically be. But I mean, I'm just saying, is I'm 52 now, and I'm well older than those guys were back then. But for some reason, I still feel like a kid in comparison to them. But these guys would all talk about Conan, and they would always, the adult dudes, they'd all get together, not just the, the big freaky looking dudes, but just the normal people, all of the guys. I would probably, if I were to put ages on these guys, I would just say middle-aged, maybe not 50, but probably in their late 30s, early 40s. And they would always talk about Conan, and they'd talk about how obsessed they are with Red Sonja. And it was a certain camp of dudes, and it's just funny because this is the type of weird kind of like, again, young people are anybody younger than me is gonna say, oh, it's cringe, whatever. Anyways, it just makes you think. It makes you scratch your head though. Even I did as a kid, like going, huh? I'm vaguely repulsed at the same time, vaguely intrigued about this. But let me get to what they're talking about. So these guard guys go up and they find this, obviously this young red-haired girl who looks very Red Sonja there. But if you remember from the last issue, this is the young daughter of that merchant guy. The merchant guy. Remember, I can't remember anybody's name. But anyways, they come up, and I love what the one guy says. He says, look, they spot her, look, right? And then he says, a woman. No, still a girl, but old enough. I don't know why, for some reason, that makes me laugh. In probably the wrong kind of way, but it makes me laugh. Because I keep thinking of, like, how, like, these older men, back in the day, they would talk about the female characters, and I probably have far surpassed the creepiness how I talk about them now today than how they did then. But they did it in such an old guard kind of way with their, like, they'd always talk about, like, her outfit, right? I'd just say her outfit or her costume or her loincloth or whatever, but they'd always refer to them as garments, her garments. Oh, she's barely wearing any garments. I guess it's just an old guy thing. But they would talk about, they would leer, and they'd have that weird look, when they talk about, and their eyes would just get really big and bug-eyed when they start talking about Red Sonja, or Jean Grey, and as a kid, I would catch this. I would see this stuff, and they'd be dusk. I always want to say they got pipes, even though some of them actually could smoke in the Legion halls back then, but. They got these pipes, and they're like, I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but this is that line this guy says in that second panel, actually technically it's third panel, or maybe it's the second panel. That's the feeling I would get, where, it's like, they'd say, a woman, no, a girl, but old enough. And then it's funny because it's followed up by something Conan says coming up here. And of course, she blasts him with an arrow to take these guys out. She's definitely not drawn like a girl there. She's got the Definitely got the hips going on. When Buscema drew her as a girl, like with her like whatever she was wearing, a dress, he did make her look very young. As soon as she loses the dress and she goes down to her, her small garments, suddenly like her arms have changed, her hips have changed, her legs have, like everything about the girl physically has changed to be more mature or older. It's just funny. I mean, I would place, if you were to ask me, I'd place that character like in her early 30s just by looking at her. So anyways, Conan shows up, and what does he say? Oh, he grabs the one guy. Where does he say it? Where does he say it? Blah, 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 brave, blah, blah, blah. Company man talk. Oh, she's kind of like, like, hey, What does she say? But anyway, she says something about, he says something, I can't find it. I thought it was right there, but I guess not. After he clocks that guy right in the face. I think he makes the comment, and he's like going like, hey, what are you leering over this young girl? She's only, she's not even 17 summers old, which I'd place her. I guess she's supposed to be at 16. I guess 16, obviously there's queens that were 16 back in this day, but I guess they kind of, I don't know. It's weird. But again, I just find that strange. But this is what that's the type of, like I said, young people would say cringe. I wouldn't use that word, but it's that weird kind of just like, you just get that kind of like, when you hear like the dudes talk about them. Anyways, that's the guy there. That's the dad. That's right. He's like, oh, blah blah blah. So I'm trying to remember this. Is this for the? Yeah. This is okay. So they go in this giant tree house. I don't know if you saw that there. And there's this other dude in there. It's this guy. Oh no, this is where he says it. He says it to him. So this guy is weird because I get the Conan the Destroyer. I get, even though I'm assuming this guy's Caucasian, but when he stands up, you get the whole Wilt Chamberlain vibes from Conan the Destroyer. Again, which had the young princess in that too. And I think they even made comments similar to that in that movie. But he's this dude. He's up here. He's got like this palace, this Tree Fort Palace or whatever. And I think where does he say it? Oh yeah, he says, and your name, your name, sir, and most importantly, your sensuously intoxicating, delectable young companion. Then he says, is less than 17 summers old, untouched, and shall remain so, as Conan says there. Now she looks young. As he says that, now she looks young in the face, but it's funny. If you look even the panel up there, like look at the size of her arms and her shoulders and stuff. She's pretty broad shoulders. Like she seems older. She's not going to be as tall as Conan, obviously, but she seems older up there. And then when it calls for her, she looks young again. I think that's funny. But anyways, I look at those facial expressions. So he's just a master at that stuff. I also love these. You're going to see this a lot in the Al Williamson stuff. But see the second panel here, how they do the background and then they cut off the panel to where the background panel only goes where the pillars are, and then you've got these characters standing, especially at that angle too, which I would put that. It's a medium shot, but I would put the horizon line like maybe at a quarter or maybe 2/3 up from the bottom of the panel. So you got a pretty decent medium shot right onto that, and you get full figures too here. And then see how tall the guy is. That's why I get the Wilt Chamberlain vibes from him. He also looks like Dungeon Master up there in that first panel. Anyways, but that is it's a classic Buscema, but it's also a classic Williamson. And I would think that Williamson, I believe, was Buscema's senior. Not by much, but I'm sure he was older, and I'm sure Buscema huge, because he was a huge Flash Gordon fan, was a huge Williamson fan. And it's also, like, Neil Adams would do that. Like, a lot of those guys at that time would do similar shots to that. And I would also see shots like that in, like these Michael Moorcock books I had, and the Jerry Cornelius Chronicles. They had, like, chapter illustrations, black and white chapter illustrations, and they would have shots like that. And so, maybe it was just a classic illustrative trope at the time, but I love that. I wish that would come back. I totally love that. So I get this weird. What does he look like? You get this weird character in here. Again, I'm spending an awful lot of time on this one comic, but essentially they're looking for this guy. I think they're looking for because this kid's got like some supernatural powers, or he's like God. Like he keeps calling himself a god, which I think he's just a demigod or a demi-human. And then I kind of wrap it up here. So he starts using some of his magic. He's got magic, and of course, Conan being the barbarian. Barbarians shun magic. He's Crom when all that stuff happens. As you can see him there, Crom. What do we got here? So, and then the one guy finally shows back up, and I think he puts an arrow through him, so proving he's not immortal. This kid, although I don't think he dies, but I think that's who that guy was here to get. Yeah, the kid's still alive there. He's still got the arrow sticking in him. I don't know why he's naked. I guess because he's supposed to be a god, a demigod, with like this palm leaf. He's got holding on to himself. Anyways, she looks young there in that bottom panel. But great stuff. I was reading this. I didn't get it towards the end. So she had this map. The guy's got the map tattooed on his chest. Yeah, just read the comic. But she changes that really tall guy that I can't remember his name was. The guy kept calling him Bolt the Stilt. He transforms him into this it looks like almost like a shambling mound from like D&D, or maybe like a Swamp Thing type character. I just find that weird. It hit, like, at first I was like, what happened? What? Oh, it's that guy. It took me a second. So that's the Conan comic. Like I said, go read it. Sorry. Oh, I try to do this right after lunch, but that's probably the best time because it's not the afternoon, but it's the worst time because I got food coma, so bear with me on this. Let's go to G.I. Joe. I'm just going back to the first page. So G.I. Joe 38. This is, I don't know if you were reading G.I. Joe at the time, but Cobra Commander has this son, Billy, I think his name is. I don't know if his name's Billy, I just want to call him Billy. Billy? My name's not Billy, Grandpa! Anyways, this is on this, with Cobra Commander's son, and I really didn't like that when they put that character in there. I mean, I love this comic because I love that cover, and you got a lot of all the Cobras in here, which is cool, and Storm Shadow's in it, but at the same time, I wasn't a big fan of... I wasn't a big fan of putting this young kid that would be about our age in it. Our age at the time. It's like, we gotta have... it's gotta be relatable to the kiddos. It doesn't. I don't want another doofus like me in the comic. I want to see these cool adults doing adult things. I don't want to see kids running around in a comic book. So... but we've got a kid in the comic book, so... And this whole thing is, he's kind of... I don't know if you read it, but he's kind of... The Cobra Commander's trying to make an example by, showing how ruthless he is. He's like, this is my son, and I'll still, he's defiant, so I'm still going to punish him, or blah, blah, blah. But of course, he's being put up to it, to challenging him by, obviously, by Major Blood and Baroness there. And all the other... this is all the classic characters. You got the Dreadnoughts. This is totally 1985. Well, technically this is more 1984. No, this is 85. The Dreadnoughts are 85. So we've got the Dreadnoughts, Storm Shadow. I want to say I think Storm Shadow and... Storm Shadow, Zartan, and Firefly, they're from 84, aren't they? And then, because I remember they came out in summer of 84. 85, we've got the Dreadnoughts. I think. I can't remember. But, I'm pretty sure the Dreadnoughts came out in 85. But, and we cut to Ripcord. Ripcord's still talking about his girlfriend, the Bongo, the bear girl. I can't remember what her name is. They got to go after this doctor, Dr. Burkhardt. Always got to go after some doctor, who gets who goes missing or whatever. And then it's just kind of a back and forth between, they got this kid on trial, and then, they're ready to go. The Joes are ready to go, so they jump into action, literally jump out of the plane into action. And they're going to Sierra Gordo, and then there's another group. It's weird, though. I mean, I guess this is cool because it could tell multiple stories. You could cover a bunch of stuff. But they did this in a couple of the other issues, too, where it's just like you've got 3 different storylines going along at the same time. Kind of like Return of the Jedi. You got the Endor going. You've got the Duel of the Fates going in the up in the Death Star in the throne room. And then you've also got the spaceship battle going. I mean, I guess that's cool, and that's really the selling point, and that's great. And it really gets people going because lots of it. Even once a scene gets dull, you guys still got action going on. But I just remembered as a kid seeing Return of the Jedi and get so irritated when they would go to the Darth Vader and Luke, because it was just until Luke starts fighting Darth Vader, when they're just talking, they're like, oh, they're just talking. Go back to the, oh, cool, Ewoks getting killed by stormtroopers. And it's like, oh, talking again. Oh, cool, spaceships, lots of them flying all over the place. Oh, they're talking again. Kind of same thing with this one. It's like, hey, we got some action. These guys are jumping out of a plane. Now we got talking going on again. Oh, talking. Talking and flashbacks. Oh, even worse. No, look, something's happening. These guys are being mobilized. You're getting some vehicles going up, getting ready to go. These guys land, get in their positions. So now finally stuff is happening. Storm Shadow's going to bust out the kid, right? So we get a little bit more action, not just talking. And it's funny. 90% of the comic books nowadays, and a lot of my comics that I do, are just people in a room talking. And because it's the easiest thing to do. Doing action is technically harder to pull off, harder to draw, harder to write. But I can see why it sells those, because when there's just people in a room talking, you're like, oh, Christ, again, talking. Now you've got, that's right. So you got 3, so you got this other team, too. They're got Blowtorch and CoverGirl, got Snake Eyes, and I think it's Footloose. And back, and then they regroup with Recondo. I think Recondo was new at the time, I'm pretty sure. And then, of course, Wakanda's got these, like, they almost look like Amazon River Basin tribes people. And that might be who they are. I don't know where Sierra Gordo is. I don't even know if it's a real place. I think it might be a fictional place. Remember Macho Grande? No, I'll never be over Macho Grande. They've got, so these guys pop up and they do the classic, it's like, hey, you guys made plenty of noise, and these guys just snuck up on you. Ha, ha, ha. Of course, that was probably before they started doing that, like in every other movie, but that was cool back then. Storm Shadow goes in to bust him out. Destro tries to stop him, and then you got these people going into the house. Oh, they're on Staten Island, that's right. I think they're looking for... What are they looking for? But anyways, the house blows up, or the door blows out and shoots out this Gatling gun, starts just mowing them down, I think. Even Duke and Lady J, they got bulletproof vests on. It almost looks like the laser vests from Flash, and they go down, but they go down hard because they take a lot of bullets to the chest, even with the vest on. I love these long vertical panels with the grass, the high grass, and then the characters all like, waist deep in the grass. That looks so cool. And then you got like the trees up there, because you basically have this more ambiguous top of the panel where you could put a caption, balloon in there, and then you can put the dialogue balloons. I love that. I think that's just textbook, classic comic book storytelling. And that's the thing, as I keep talking about with these comics, as I was talking about with the John Buscema, is this, at this time, this is how to draw Marvel the comics way, literally, proof in the pudding. I mean, this is like 101. I mean, this is, all of these shots, and these are classic comic book shots. These are like, I mean, these are timeless. They still look amazing today. And the thing is, today, we've got these weirdo panels and stuff they put into a lot of comics, and it just, it doesn't have the same look. I mean, sure, there's some static panels in here, but I mean, panels like that are awesome. So yeah, these guys are back. They're retaliating, and then they come across. Then the other guys come across this Cobra bunker, which they don't really necessarily want to break into because it's pretty heavily fortified. And they just got this small team. Again, Storm Shadow gets away before Destro can get him. These guys are going back into that house, attacking, which is weird how the quality just jumps. Yeah, really crazy. Oh yes, Tomax and Zaymot, and I guess that's a Crimson Guard with them, or a Bat maybe? I think it's a Crimson Guard. This is 85, because Tomax and Zaymot came out in 85, so yeah, this is basically, this comic is, you're featuring as many of the new action figures as possible to get you to go out and buy them. What's-her-face shows up, the Bongo the Bear Girl, I can't remember what her name is. She shows up, I think that's the end of the comic. That's the end of the comic. Okay. So that was the G.I. Joe issue 38. It's a great comic. I'll try to... Well, we got a little... it's been about half an hour. We'll go through these a little bit faster. But this one, like I said, I was not going to read the Hulk. And then I noticed this character. I always notice the women, I'm sorry. But anyways, I noticed this character, and then I noticed these guys, and I went, you know, this looks a lot like Brett Blevins. I don't think Brett Blevins did the final book. And then I look at the thing here, and I see, oh, it's Brett Blevins. And look who's, speak of the devil, look who is inking this. Al Williamson. I just got through talking about him doing the Star Wars issue. Not only is Al Williamson's pencils amazing, but his inking is perfect. And if you notice, look at the inking in those skeleton soldiers at the bottom there. It's awesome. I love Alan Williamson's ink. I love his pencils. I love everything about the guy. But I mean, his inks. He got a lot of inking jobs. It's funny how a lot of those EC guys, including the other guy, I can't remember his name, is off the top of my head. The guy came up with Power Girl. Oh, whatever his name is. They got a lot of inking jobs. I think I mentioned this in another comic book, or another video, but yeah, they got a lot of inking jobs, and they didn't do a lot of pencils. They pretty much, like, they sequestered Alan Williamson to just doing Star Wars, because it's essentially Flash Gordon, and his Flash Gordon work was so stellar, they'll put him on Star Wars. But we got Brett Blevins here, and I don't know if you know anything about Brett Blevins. He will eventually, once, I don't think it's directly after Sienkiewicz leaves New Mutants, but Brett Blevins ends up taking New Mutants, and he really takes it in a direction. As so did Bill Sienkiewicz, definitely took it in a direction, but Brett Blevins takes it in another direction, and I like Brett Blevins better than Sienkiewicz. So when I saw that, it's like, oh, this is Brett Blevins and Al Williamson. It's like, oh, I gotta read this. I don't even care if it's boring. It drives me crazy. I gotta read it. Because the last issue was just like, talking about Snorefest. But look at the way, I love the way he draws the Hulk. He's got this, I was funny because Blevins, to me, again, we're going to get into Arthur Adams soon, because I think the following month is when the first issue of Longshot came out. This is before, and also you got the X-Men Annual and the New Mutants Special Edition. So you get a lot of Arthur Adams starting in 85, and you also get a lot of Brett Blevins, so he's definitely contemporary. But Blevins is not as overly stylized as Adams, but he has a similar flair. And this is where one of two things happens with Marvel Comics. I love how to draw comics the Marvel way, right? I love John Buscema, I love Al Williamson, I love John Romita Sr. You know, you've got these characters that are drawing a house style from Marvel that's classic classic comics in general. I don't like how far away we've gotten from that today, but if you want to blame anybody, you got to start blaming guys like Brett Blevins and Arthur Adams, because they're the first ones to kind of make that like cartoony, like where they make the characters more like cartoon characters, but at the same time they still have all the line mileage in it to make it still look like a classic comic book with a lot of the classic comic book tropes. And there's a story about that. I mean, we'll get into more of that later with Adams, because I know the story on that between him and Jim Shooter. But on this one, I don't know as much about Brett Blevins, like the lore of Blevins. I know who he is, obviously, and I know his art, but I don't know a lot of his lore. But I gotta say, he's very similar to Adams, and I love Adams at the time, but I'm warming up to Blevins more, and you know, I started noticing him more when I went back and started rereading a lot of the Fall of the Mutants with you know, and then the New Mutants versions of it, which I didn't read at the time back in the day. Hint, hint for my later stuff. Anyways. But yeah, he's one of the reasons why the comics started to break away from that, which everybody, it's the modern age, everybody thinks that's a good thing. I'm of two minds. Yes, I think it was a good thing to break away a bit, still keeping yourself rooted in the classic, you know, Marvel house style, but stretching it a little bit. And I think that a lot of the guys at this time and into the late 80s, like McFarlane, they would do that just enough, you know. Same with Mark Silvestri. They would do that just enough where they would push the boundaries without going just lock, stock, and barrel way off base. And I find that in the 90s, what happened is they got way off base. But if you want to, but at the same time, I kind of blame these guys for that. But at the same time, I also like their artwork because they melded it together. I know seems to be, you know, a fine line between art and bullshit, but you know, that's just what I think. I mean, you guys can argue with me. You can say I'm full of shit or whatever, but that's what I think, and I still hold to it. So anyways, the comic was as painful to read as I thought it was going to be. But the thing is, the keys were jangled in front of me. And when I mean keys are jangling, is you've got people in cloaks, right, that look like cultist members. Right there, you're jangling the keys with me. You're pushing my buttons. You got cult members. You got a female cult member who's clearly, you know, has a tight cloak thing on. You can tell it's a female. You're dangling my keys. And then you pull out, you got this all yellow hot chick, alien whatever chick thing, but she's hot chick. It's just like, oh, what'd you do here? Oh, now I gotta read it. And then she was going to be a sacrifice, and you're like, oh, and then you got this cool cloaked character up there, which totally pushes my buttons. And then you got this art style, it's great, and then you got, you know, scenes where the yellow girl's in a position over there that's, you know, you can't keep it it's distracting, keeps your eyes going right to it, but in a good way. Great panel though. I mean, the way that ground's curved up like that, and then and there's a lot of, I mean, there's things that you guys don't, again, breaking the panel up atop, doing that 3 figures there. You've got that Doc Martin gray for the ground background. It's a nice neutral color. You've got the white with the blue, the sky blue on there to make it look shiny, and then you've got this I can't remember what the Doc Martin color is for that, but that's that ground there. It's like that reddish brown. It's just classic. And then you got that bottom panel with that stark red background, and you got some of those effects on the side. This is just classic, good comic book art. You got some very Conan-esque scenes here. I mean, again, we got Williamson inking Blevins here, and even the horse creature alien things even have a very cartoony look to them. I mean, this could have easily been a cartoon in the 80s. Then you get this double page spread again. They put her in that position again just to entice creeps like me. But anyways, Then you got these guys. Just everything about this is just awesome. Just and it's action. I mean, you got me going with the action stuff. He's stealing the girl away. Hulk's pounding the horses and stuff and just ripping guys off. This is awesome. You got this. So this blue. So the whole premise of this is you've got these goblins or whatever they are, and they were created by and they got like this cursor like in Tron, like yes, no, except for it talks more. It's not just a binary. They're created by Doctor Strange, which again I'm not a big Doctor Strange fan, but Doctor Strange, Hulk goes a little too savage and crazy and gets too far away from Banner, right? So he puts them in this like weird world, this limbo world. It's not limbo specifically, but it's just this alternate dimension. And he creates these characters to kind of like retrain and kind of keep an eye on Hulk until they see if he can come back from this like total savage Hulk. And then but then the blue character like really wants to keep his rage going, and he's like, oh, I love it when it's Hulk smash. It's Hulk smash time. And then you got the more of this other elfy, I think it's a girl. I'm not sure if it's a girl or a boy. Whatever it is, it's sexless. But and it's like the voice of reason. And then you've got this bit thing, which is kind of like the neutral in between character. That's kind of the premise. And when the art was not as good, I found that premise to be just a snore fest. Now that the art's good, it's breathed some life into it, and I really like it where it's going now. And it's also, because it's Blevins, it's because it's kind of this weird world. I don't know exactly where they're at in the New Mutants, but I'm thinking that they're setting this up for where Blevins goes on to New Mutants. We'll find out more of that as it progresses. Again, I could just go look this stuff up, but I want to experience this stuff firsthand, because I didn't really understand it back then when I was that age. So now I've got more experience and comic book knowledge and all that stuff now. So I'm throwing it all back at that time period. I can analyze it a lot better and understand it. But great stuff. Again, we're gonna go well over an hour. Real quick, he turns back to Banner at the end, and it turns out that the person they're going to sacrifice him instead, and the person who's going to sacrifice him is the girl with her legs, her yellow hips. So anyways, let's skip that. Okay, this is one I wanted to get to, and then we've only got one other comic that I'll go through. But we're not going to go through all of Marvel Age, but I want you to see something. This is Marvel Age 29. Right here, right off the bat. Let's blow this up just so you guys can see it in all of its glory. Okay, remember what I was saying, that the Avengers, I know they turned it into the MCU because they lost the rights to do Spider-Man and X-Men, but really Spider-Man and X-Men were the only thing they had back in the 80s. I mean, they had other comics, but most people were just reading a handful of comic books in the 80s, the most popular stuff. And I said that, X-Men and Amazing Spider-Man were right up there at the top, right? Okay, I got proof. Because now we'll read this real quick. So, hello again, I'm still here. This is one of the editors talking. And I've got the top 10 for the October, November, and December cover dated issues from last year. So this would have been cover dated 1984, October, December, November, December, which cover dated. This is based on the average sales of these titles during when they came out. Because remember, they always come out a little earlier. July, August, and September. For the on-sale period, it includes the newsstand, and it also includes subscriptions, and it also includes direct sales. So digital comics didn't exist back then, where it's hard to track those sales. I don't know why it is. You think it would be. But anyways, back then they're going off physical sales of comic books. Newsstand, because it was still around. Subscriptions, they're still around today, but remember I had 4 subscriptions going back at the time. I can't remember. Well, anyways, direct sales, right, which is what direct market, what they have today, where they're selling specifically to comic book shops. So all of it. This is based on all of it. So anyways, he makes a joke there, blah blah blah. You know, this Denise Beauvais is the sales director of Marvel, director of newsstands, blah blah blah. But anyways, so this is the top 10 of, and this will carry over, obviously, into 1985. But at the and it pretty much, it's with the exception of like some Punisher stuff, this is pretty much the all of the rest of the 80s in Marvel. Number one comic. What got me into comics? As you can see it behind me. What got me into comic books in 1984? Secret Wars, right? That was the number one comic for these 3 months of sales. And it might have fluctuated a bit, but if you look at the last one that they did one of these lists, it was very close. And if you look at the next one, which I think is in a few months, they kind of go over kind of 1985, and it's very close. So what's number one? Secret Wars, right? Got me into comic books. It got tons of kids into comic books in 84. Got a toy line, you got a comic book line. All they needed was a cartoon at the time, and they would have had it cinched. But they didn't have a cartoon. So anyways, that's the first thing. Number one, right? And obviously it's a maxi series, 12 issues, so that's not going to, it's not an ongoing series. Most of these are ongoing series. There's a few limited series in here, as I'll show you. Number two, X-Men. So essentially, if you took Secret Wars away, the number one comic book from Marvel at this time was the X-Men, not the Avengers. Spider-Man's number two, but I mean, even now it did Spider-Man. So you could, the 80s was all about the X-Men, and the 90s were all about the X-Men. That's why when Marvel was sinking, they said, "Hey, let's sell the movie rights off to Sony because we need a lot of cash." And Sony's like, "We'll pay a lot of cash for that." You know, they had a great selling cartoon in the 90s. You know, you had Jim Lee cutting his teeth and becoming popular from X-Men. I mean, X-Men is Marvel. Only second to that, of course, would be Spider-Man. I mean, Spider-Man is more Marvel's Batman, right? As for DC. So, number three, Kitty Pryde and Wolverine. Okay, it's a 6-issue series that eventually goes away, but that was huge. It's X-Men. The X-Men Annual. I vaguely remember that annual. It would be Annual 8, and that was Dazzler was in it. Can't remember what all. I know obviously Annual 9 comes out this year in 1985, and that's got Arthur Adams. It's part of the Tales of Asgard, the Asgardian Wars, which, you know, kind of solidified my love of Arthur Adams' art. But so you got the X-Men Annual again. Off the top, and X-Men obviously were prominent in Marvel superheroes, Secret Wars. So it's all X-Men. And then Spider-Man. Amazing Spider-Man, if you notice. Not Web of, not Peter Parker, even though I kind of like those issues. Amazing Spider-Man was where it was at. And he's obviously the number 2 ongoing series that's the bestseller. Then Alpha Flight. Now that doesn't stay there for very long because Alpha Flight pretty much flops once Byrne stops doing it. And this is obviously the Byrne Alpha Flight, so everybody likes it. Funny enough, what is not, one comic on here I'm surprised is not on here, but we'll keep going. Then you got New Mutants. This is when Sienkiewicz was doing New Mutants. New Mutants was hot at the time. West Coast Avengers. Now they're referring to the West Coast Avengers limited series, the 1 through 4 that came out in 84. Not the ongoing series, which will start, I think, next week. And I think I cover it next week or the week after, or maybe it's the next month. Maybe it's June I cover it. But West Coast Avengers, which would be Volume 2, starts with number 1, the ongoing series. I'm surprised that it was a good limited series, but I'm surprised it's there. And then, of course, our two, extended universe comics. G.I. Joe number 1, obviously, and Transformers. That list right there pretty much is all of the 80s, for the most part. And I would say, for the most part, before the comic book crash of like 92 or whatever it was, I would say that's also as well. So if you just want to take the copper series, not bronze, the copper era of comics, which is the very first part of the modern era, as far as Marvel goes, that's it. And that's kind of what I'm going to pay. I'm sure I'm going to read some Conan because I like my Conan. I'm sure I'm going to read some other comics here and there. But for the most part, that's as close to what I loved then, and there's a reason for it. That's what everybody loved. Not that I've had a lot of detractors, but I've had people tell me, it's like, oh yeah, come on, no, the Avengers were super popular in the 80s in comics. No, they weren't. The West Coast Avengers were, because it was new, but not the Avengers. Not the Avengers title was not that popular. The comic I'm surprised is not on here, though, is Fantastic Four, because Byrne was on Fantastic Four at the time, and obviously She-Hulk's on there. And they made that series popular, but I would say if that's the list, and you took out all the limited series, I would probably follow up with, and I also consider that West Coast Avengers a limited series. I would say after New Mutants, I would say it would be Fantastic Four with Byrne. Alpha Flight obviously drops off that list once Byrne takes off. And I would say arguably when Byrne leaves Fantastic Four, and the Thing comes back and She-Hulk gets her own series in '89, I would say arguably Fantastic Four is not as popular. So you've got, like I said, there's a core characters and there's core artists and creators and there are titles that are all what's the most popular stuff at that time. And people can argue me all day, but I mean that right there is proof in the pudding. The Avengers were not, like I said, the only reason the MCU had to do the Avengers is because they did not have the rights to Spider-Man or the X-Men. So they had to do the Avengers. They had to start out with Iron Man. You know, they did the Iron Man thing and then going into the MCU, right? They had to. They did a great job with it. I'm not a huge fan of it because I don't like live action, but that's how it went. So, again, that's all I guess I'll talk about that on that, but I just wanted to show you guys that in the Marvel Age. The rest of the Marvel Age is just upcoming. Oh, there's one other thing I wanted to mention real quick in here was if we look at title shipping May, let's go to more coming attractions. Title shipping in June, right? That's a lot of comics in 1 month. I did not realize that many comics were put out. This is also including, obviously, the Star Imprint and Epic. But that's a lot of Marvel comic books in 1 month. And then follow up in July, that's also a lot. I didn't realize there was that many. When I made the comment, you know, they didn't have anywhere near that many comics come out as a month like they do now, right? Well, they do have a lot now, but they had a lot then too. So that point's kind of moot. Again, there's proof in all this stuff. I mean, the proof's out. The truth is out there. So you'll see this stuff. Anyways, let's just finish up. We're gonna skip Thor, the Alt Simon's Thor. We'll just flip through it real quick. Although it's a nice shot of Lorelei there. He keeps it going with her. Anyways, people love this. I love Sif. I think Sif looks great. Maybe it's just I like the dark hair and the legs. But anyways, Beta Ray Bill's in this. I just couldn't get into this, and I still can't get into it. I don't know. I think he's a great artist, and I think he definitely. I just his too loose style and too scratchy. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of Simonson's art. Anyways, we'll skip to the last one. And it's funny, but there's one big thing in this comic you'll think is, I don't know if you'll think it's funny, but it's just like, whoa, it hit me as a kid. I remember reading that and going like, whoa. But I guess it probably has more weight now because what Kitty Pryde says in it was kind of commonplace back in that time when nobody really said much about it. But nowadays, with the way things are, and you know, especially after the Black Lives Matter stuff, and certain people being canceled or kicked or in trouble for saying a certain word, which we won't say. But Kitty Pryde says it in this comic, and she says it. It's not derogatory. She's making a point, which again, so people probably look at it and go, oh. No. She's making a point to a specific character, and but again, even reading it again, and this is probably the fourth time I read this particular issue, and I was just like, whoa, it's still jarring. Right, John Romita Jr. This classic team: Dan Green, Chris Claremont, all the Anna Senti, and all the usual suspects. So you've got. It's kind of funny too, because what's his face? Xavier's talking at a college with all these college kids or whatever, and it's very. Like, I can see these kids in the crowd. These are the type of kids that would, like, challenge, like, Shapiro and get in arguments with Shapiro when he went and talked to colleges and stuff. Just funny. The guy's smoking. You can still smoke in there in the auditorium, apparently. Flash over to Storm. I gotta say that the Storm in Africa is... I find it... I mean, that's the nice panel. But I find it to be a snore fest. These people are hunting the lion, this white-maned lion. They end up shooting Storm. Obviously, so they don't kill her. And then you got the X-Men are talking with, what's his face here, with Xavier, and Magneto's there, and there's still, tension because they don't like Magneto. They're still angry at Magneto for being Magneto. And they're not, they haven't, welcomed him into the tribe yet. I just think that shot's so funny in the bottom. I swear I've been in a deli or a restaurant that looks like that, the huge glass window, and the big table like that. I don't know where it was, but I remember. It's just weird when I saw that. It's probably someplace in New York that they normally go to. So anyways, they're sitting around talking, yada, yada, yada. Like I said, I'm not going to get into the story exactly, but... here's the thing. So the Beyonder walks in. Remember, this is the time, as you saw on the cover. This is Secret Wars 2 while it's going on. The Beyonder walks in, and I think this is when he's looking... I think he's taking on the personas of Captain America, Steve Reeves. No, what's his name? Yeah. Steve... What is Captain America's real name? I can't remember. Steve Reeves? Or is that the guy who plays... Hercules, the big muscle, but I can't remember. Anyway, but he walks in, orders a sandwich, and then Rachel sees them. Nobody else sees him, except for the deli guy. He sees him because he's going to serve him the sandwich, and then of course he leaves, and then the guy gets mad. But oh god, those outfits! What were you doing, Romita? Those outfits do not do Kitty, and that head. On Rachel in that panel there, how small it... Oh, that's just terrible. Anyways, I don't mind the way he does her face. All her eyes are a little too close together. I know I nitpicked the crap out of him, but... and you got, what's his face? Nightcrawler's asking this priest, he's like, he's like, if the Beyonder's not God, then what is he? If he has the powers of God, type of like, yada, yada. There's people breaking in. To the college here. Oh yeah, remember. Like I said, I'm not going to get huge into the story, but Xavier thinks these people are going to break, or this murder is going to happen, and then so they go watch the college, and then you've got this Rachel and blah blah blah. They're trying to find the Beyonder. Oh yeah, here we go. So they're watching the college. Kitty tries to smoke one of Wolverine's cigars, and she starts coughing her lungs out. And she's still all teary-eyed. It's funny at the end there. He just kind of pats her on the back. And then they do find these guys breaking in, right? Here we go. So Kitty comes in here. She steals these guys' pizza, right? And there's this guy. Obviously, he's black. He's got the total 85 look. He's got the Atlantic Star, Midnight Star guy look here. Or what's not that? Yeah, those guys. But what's the other guy? The El DeBarge, whoever. That look, the soul glow. Anyways, so he's basically he's calling her he's like, so you're a mutant, right? If you got to be, you're Xavier's assistant. You got to be a mutant, and they're talking to her, they're trashing mutants. They're pretty much, being racist towards her mutants. And then she comes back with, she's like, he says, right here, this second to last panel, you a mutant then, Pride, like him. And she's like, gee, I don't know, Phil, are you a, she drops the N-bomb right there. Like, whoa! Like I said, still today, kind of gives you the goosebumps. You're like, wow, that was pretty bold of Claremont to throw that in there. But again, she's not being racist. She's making a point. He's the one. he's obviously a mutant hater, right? She's like, hey, basically throwing it back at him. What do you think when people say this? How does that make you feel, right? That's how it makes me feel, when you're being derogatory towards mutants. So, again, this isn't social agenda. This isn't agenda politics here. This is how you do it. And Claremont had lots of statements he wanted to say, especially contemporary statements about the state of the world and the state of America and the state of things, especially social situations. That's what the X-Men are all about. And the way he puts this in here, and it's so poignant and so just slips it in, just boom. And he sends it in, right? And he doesn't linger. He doesn't make a point. She doesn't grandstand or do anything stupid about that and go on about this, whatever. She just makes a statement, and it's powerful. That's what modern comic books lack. I don't mind them making social statements. They've always made social statements in comic books, but it's just the heavy-handed way that they grandstand, and they make the comic more about their ideology than about the story, and that's proof in the pudding right here again. It seems like this week I'm proving all of my theories correct. This is how you do it. Again, argue with me all you want in the comments, whatever. But I stand by my statements with this stuff. So again, rest of the comic. After that bomb, they chloroform her. And then you've got what's her face. Then this is where what's her face, Rachel, the Phoenix too. She kind of zaps out. Leave her alone. She finally the hunter the mutant hunter of her comes out finally, and then Wolverine sees it, and they all see it, and Wolverine knows like, oh shit, this is not a good thing, right? Then her real powers come out. So this is when Rachel kind of comes alive. She's got the markings on the face. This, like I said, this is when I really started paying attention to X-Men. I was just like, oh, I love this. And it's still, like I said, goosebumps. And then it leads to the end of the issue. So, anyways, let's end it because we've gone over the hour. Sorry about that, guys, but we did. Let's go back real quick. We got to follow up on what I said we're going to do. So let's go through that real quick. So what comics, this is the comics that I picked up literally this week, 40 years ago, 1985. The Avengers? Nope. Conan? I did. I should have picked up the Avengers because it's about John Buscema. I forgot to talk about that earlier. So anyways, I tried to read this issue. I gotta say, the Avengers at this time, even though I love his artwork and his art's awesome, and you got Nebula in this comic, and she's looking good, I just couldn't pay attention to it. I just don't like the way it's written. The art looks great, but I just don't like the story. So I read about halfway through it, and I didn't even get to the Nebula pages, and I was like, I'm done. But I didn't have it. And you think I would have at this time, because I definitely had the How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way this time, and I definitely knew who Buscema was. But I didn't have this comic. Conan the Barbarian. Did I have it? Yes. Again, I didn't buy it off the rack. I got that comic book from my Aunt Zola from the grocery bag. Go back a couple of videos and I'll talk about the grocery bags. Let's see, Dreadstar, no. G.I. Joe had the subscription, so of course I had it. And when I got that, as soon as it's funny because you didn't know. I didn't even see any pictures of it, but I had that little paper. Now it's plastic, but they had this paper covering when you get the comic in the mail. I don't know how they always came in perfect condition, but it came. I slipped that thing off of it. I saw that yellow, and I saw Destro and Snake Eyes. Like, oh my, not Snake Eyes, Storm Shadow. I was like, oh my god, that's an awesome cover. The Hulk, nope, didn't have it. Marvel Age, nope. Obviously, Moon Knight, nope. Rom, I still had the subscription. About to run out. And I didn't reread it. Thor, nope. X-Men, what do you think? Of course. So really, the only comic I really bought, I'm just trying to think. It's probably when I picked up a couple of those extra packs when I was there, or found some other issues maybe that were just still a couple of months old or a couple of weeks old that I might have went back and picked up. I can't remember exactly even that. But as far as new comics, it was probably just the X-Men. Because like I said, I had Conan, didn't buy it at the store. Had G.I. Joe, came in a subscription. Had the Rom comics, came in a subscription. So if you guessed just the X-Men was the only comic I bought off the shelf, then you were correct. You get a prize. No, you don't get a prize. I don't have any prize. If I had money, if we were making money on this channel, I'd give you a prize. But I don't have any. With the 25 people that watch it and 5 people only watched last week's, which makes no sense. I don't know how it goes from like 50 people to like 10 to like 25 people to like 5. It's just like, is it the specific comics I'm talking about, or is it just the algorithm being a flake? I don't know. But anyways, so again, going forward, we're seeing all the titles dwindle down into a handful, and I would say about 10, like that top 10 is right. And like I said, you could swap out one limited series for another limited series. Obviously, there's a limited series starting up pretty soon that I really liked when it came out, the Long Shot series. But other than that, I would say as far as the core titles, though, X-Men, Amazing Spider-Man, G.I. Joe, Transformers here and there. I don't think I read the one issue, but I did read the next issue after that. And I know I'm going to read the other one because there's certain characters finally show up in that, which I really liked as a kid. But it is what it is. So that was week 19. So we're going to go on to week 20 next time. And so we're speeding through May here. I know May 22nd, let me just see, I think is nothing. Yeah, it's a UK week, so I might take a break that week just to give myself a breather. Because I don't want to get too ahead, because it's going to throw me off. Because then if I record the 29 or week 22, then where it's supposed to go, and it's going to be right on, like the day I post, it's going to be the day that I do the video. I want to keep giving myself that buffer, so I'll probably skip that week 21. Just to keep the buffer going and keep it all on track the way I'm doing it. I know it's confusing on your end and might be frustrating, but at my end it makes things a lot better. Like I said, until I get more than 25 people watching these videos, you're going to be doing it my way. So, yeah, and then we're going to be on to June. We'll be on to the summer titles. And like I said, it would have been week 29 of July. I turned 12 years old on the 19th, and as you see here, it's 2 days off. Then that's weird. How did we get? Because of this. That's weird. I don't get that. It's just somebody explain that to me. I just don't understand why the weeks aren't lining up perfectly. That's weird. Anyways, so on to the next one. I will catch you guys on the next week. Yeah, sorry. All right, talk to you later. Bye bye.